Okay, now in this section we are going to discuss digital camcorder formats and standards. These confuse the hell out of many videographers, especially when it comes to web video. Some of the things we will cover are progressive scan and interlaced camcorders, resolutions, data compression, and so much more. This section might leave you scratching your head a bit, but bear with me, it's important that you understand these things, as it can make a huge difference when editing and in the quality of your videos. Choosing what digital format to use can be an absolute pain in the butt. One minute you think you have it, then some new breakthrough happens and there's a whole new bunch of things to get your head around. There are hundreds of formats you can convert your video into, and it can take you a long time to get your head around the subject. Look at the latest big advancement in digital recording. AVCHD, also known as H.264. This is an MP4 video format. It has become the standard for most consumer camcorders globally. But did you know there are 6 possible combinations of this format, depending on the brand and make? And on top of that, AVCHD is only one of a dozen video formats available on the market. Some of the popular formats include MPEG-2, QuickTime, Windows Media Video, Flash, Real Media, AVI, and many more. And to make things even more complicated, soon there is to be a new industry shakeup with the release of a whole new breed of video formats, H.265, which will be unveiled as NGVC. It is to take over from AVCHD. This format is said to be able to deliver slightly better image than AVCHD and will still download 25% faster and take up half the space. Starting to scratch your head yet? Well, don't worry, just sit back and relax and enjoy, because I'm going to simplify everything there is to know about the different video formats and standards. Let's start off with NTSC and PAL. These basically refer to the frequencies or frames per second videos recorded and viewed. You see, video consists of a series of images shown one after the other in a progression, fooling the brain to think you are watching a moving image. The faster the frame rate, the higher the frequency. Certain countries around the world use different frequencies to view video. If you are sitting in USA, Canada, Mexico, some parts of Central South America, Japan, Taiwan, and Korea, you would be watching at 30 frames per second. If you are sitting in the UK, Germany, Spain, Portugal, Italy, China, India, and most of Africa and the Middle East, you would be watching at 25 frames per second. PAL is set at 25 frames per second and NTSC is set at 30 frames per second. PAL seems to be more widely used around the world than NTSC. So just that you understand, these frequencies are related to watching video depending on the country you live in. Without getting too technical about this subject, just know that PAL records at a higher pixel rate, but NTSC plays at a higher frame rate. There is a huge debate about which is best, and there are arguments to support both. But don't worry too much about whether you own a PAL or an NTSC camcorder, because for viewing online, both are adequate. Now this brings us to progressive scan and interlaced camcorders. Okay, so as I mentioned before, video consists of a load of still images placed one after the other. Now to fool the brain into thinking that you are looking at a moving image, early inventors realized that you essentially only needed 24 frames every second to watch a movie through a projector onto a screen. But as technology has changed and the television was invented, it was realized that 24 frames per second was way too jerky and jumpy, especially when the camera turns or pans slowly. So it was decided that it would have to be bumped up to 50 or 60 frames per second for PAL or NTSC, depending on where you lived. Now on the bright side, this was much less jumpy than before, but on the downside, it created way too much data to deal with in those days. Trying to squeeze 50 or 60 full frames per second down a TV antenna seemed nearly impossible. A solution had to be found, and that solution was to interlace two images together. Basically what this means is that two frames would make up one image. How they did this was to break up each frame into a series of horizontal lines. These lines were numbered. Half frame 1 consists of odd numbers and half frame 2 consists of even numbers. These half frames are also known as fields, and you will always need 2 fields to make up one full frame. This technique meant half the data, and presto, it became much easier to work with. Doing this meant that images viewed on televisions were much smoother, especially when motion was involved. And thus it became a standard for capturing and viewing moving images for over 50 years. Now, as much as older style television sets were designed to play interlaced images, consumer video cameras were predominantly designed to record interlaced footage as well, which meant smaller storage. Well, smaller storage for those days anyway. Interlaced video worked great on old-fashioned TVs and is still a widely used format around the world today. But things have changed a bit since those early days. As technology has evolved, new generation flat panel TVs and computer monitors are just not designed for interlaced footage. They do things a little bit differently. Instead of showing half the image or field at a time, they show a full image, one after the other. This is called progressive scan. Now, to view interlaced video on a flat panel TV or computer can cause havoc because it has to be de-interlaced first, which meant joining interlaced fields back together again without losing quality. De-interlacing can be a minefield of its own, because when you simply slot the 2 fields back together again and play it on a computer monitor or flat panel TV, anything that is moving in that footage has jagged shark's teeth-like edges, and that can look very unprofessional. Interlaced video is slowly being phased out. It is only viable on older style TVs. More modern equipment uses progressive scan mode. Progressive scan simply means that each frame consists of a full picture and is not interlaced. The thing is, most cameras available today still shoot interlaced footage. It does seem though that more and more consumer cameras are emerging that are capable of shooting in both progressive scan and interlaced. The way to tell these camcorders apart, usually a camcorder will say it's either 1080i, which is interlaced, or 1080p, which is progressive scan. Now, with the right equipment and software, it is possible to successfully de-interlace footage, but the final product will never be as good as shooting in progressive scan first. So to get the best playback results for online video, it would be best to use a camcorder that shoots progressive scan. This way you don't have to worry about the headaches of de-interlacing your footage first. There are a few cameras available that shoot both functions, interlaced and progressive. You might consider getting one of these. If your camcorder only shoots interlaced video, don't panic. I will explain how to work with this later in the course.